In this video, I'm going to show you how to take this plain tablecloth and bring it to life again with a pop of color along the edge. Here's a quick project, so let's get started. So getting started, I take my tablecloth, my pre-made tablecloth that's already been hemmed, and I have this fringe, and I set it along the edge to find a spot where I'm going to be making my seam edge along the all four sides. So that's my goal, and so I line it up with the edge of the tablecloth. I start about a half an inch in. Set my needle in first, put the needle down first, so it's all set in the spot exactly where I want it. And when I have it started to line up, I drop the presser foot. And then I'm going to start very slowly at first. I've got my snips ready, which I always use for many different purposes. I'll show you in a little bit about that. But I get started, backstitch a little bit, and just very, very carefully keeping the fringe clear from the needle. Just let the walker foot do the work, letting both the fabric and the band of the fringe feed in very carefully. And that, just take your time, stopping along the way to make sure that the fringe is free from the needle. So here we go, we're getting close to the end. Keeping the fringe clear all the way. Your goal is to stop your stitching half an inch before you get to the very end, because you need to make the turn. You need to make a nice 90-degree angle turn that matches the edge of the tablecloth. So get to the point where you're just a half an inch from the end, so basically where you're going to be starting your next run. Set the needle down, have it ready to go, and give it a little bit of a back stitch. And then very carefully, you don't want to cut the fringe, just snip it out. It's still attached, everything along the way. Now we want to start down the next end. So here's where you need to fold it over, the band that holds the fringe, fold it over to create that 90-degree angle. And you can see here, hold it with your fingers, and you got to get it underneath the presser foot of the machine. Now this is where I use my snips to sort of press it down. My fingers are too fat to get under there, and furthermore I want to be careful not to get my fingers down there. And drop that needle so it's holding it down so it's ready to go in the next seam that it's going to sew. Give it a little back stitch, and then get started on your next run. Once again, stop if you feel like even just a tiny bit of fringe has been caught. Stop, take a stitch out, back it up, and then keep going. One tip I have for this type of project, it's not that difficult. Those angles, the turns can be a little bit tricky. It's really a good idea to practice. So you want that to be nice, crisp edge like that. To match the edge of the tablecloth. So what I would suggest is when you go to buy your fringe, buy an extra half yard if you can. Get an old piece of fabric, something that you don't really care about, and make a prototype. Practice first on something that isn't really going to be a big deal for you, and then you get a chance to see how it goes. So as we're coming to the end now, getting down to where our final side is done and to the final corner, we want to slow down when we get there. And we're going to be cutting the fringe, but stop before you get there. I just got to snip a couple of those threads from the very beginning off. And I want to allow a little extra to fold over and tuck it under to make it look like it's one long continuous piece. So I'm going to cut the fringe about a half an inch extra and fold under that flange part there to create that right angle so there's no raw edge showing. Here's where I'm going to use my snips again to kind of hold it down for me, because my fat fingers are in the way there. And get all the way to the corner and drop my needle, and then lift up that presser foot, tucking in that raw edge to make sure nothing's showing. Real careful about it so that it doesn't reveal where you're started and stopped. And then gonna make that turn, a couple more stitches to get to the very end, back stitch it, and there you go. Snip it off. It looks pretty clean. Got a nice clean edge. Getting ready, almost ready to set your table. So before you put your cloth on the table, last step, probably a really important one that sometimes isn't really fun to do, would be you need to iron it. You need to hit the edge, all your stitches, with some steam. Now be careful. I try to avoid putting the iron directly on the fringe, because you don't know, sometimes these fringes have, they don't do well with an iron. But you want to get where you were stitching particularly, hit it with some steam, hit it with some heat, and then let it cool before you move it. See where it's puckering there, that needs a little bit of a steam edge. Just give it some heat right over the stitch line. Always test it first to make sure that the iron can handle it. And then of course press out any wrinkles in the middle of the cloth. It came from when you had laundered it or when you were working with the fabric. In the long run, it's going to look great on your table when it's nice and smooth. And there you have it.